A high-stakes phone call today between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin.
We're getting down to a very critical stage.
It's believed to be the first time Trump and Putin are speaking to each other since Ukraine agreed to a 30-day ceasefire with U.S. negotiators a week ago. Still no guarantees from Russia.
But it's a bad situation in Russia, and it's a bad situation in Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine is not good, but we're going to see if we can work a peace agreement.
Both leaders said to discuss the future of the war in Ukraine, including possibly how land and assets in Ukraine could be divided. The White House yesterday saying one point of discussion, who will control the nuclear power plant on the border of Ukraine and Russia.
President Trump finishing up this round-robin call with Vladimir Putin there from the White House to the Kremlin. And this, of course, we've been discussing it over the course of the last couple of weeks. Look, this is really big because there's information that's been discussed, and certainly President Trump mentioned this a little bit on Air Force One recently. Special Envoy Witkoff, who has now been completely just really taken the face of these negotiations, as well as negotiations in the Middle East. So he's got just an incredible amount of responsibility in his portfolio right now. Talking about land agreements, talking about territory, talking about which territories will be continue to be part of Russia, which, if any, will revert to Ukraine that are currently in the fighting. And New York Times has a huge report that all of this potentially could come down to the city of Odessa. Odessa, of course, being the key Ukrainian port on the Black Sea, but a city, of course, that was historically part of the Russian Empire. And we've talked about the geopolitical importance of Odessa for years on this program. We went to Odessa on this program. I'm not trying to toot my own horn on that, but I'm just trying to say that this is how far we've gone to highlight the importance of Odessa. In fact, in my desk at home, I keep a jar of sand from the beach of Odessa that's right there. And in fact, we have some photos from my brother and I were there about the landmines on the beach. That this is what it's all about. This is about control of the Black Sea, because the Black Sea is the gateway to empires. This is the friction point between East and West. The city of Istanbul, formerly known as Constantinople, directly south, almost directly south of Odessa, across the Black Sea, towards the opening to the Mediterranean, towards the opening to Athens, Greece, and then to the wider Mediterranean, Rome, and eventually the entire world. That's what it's all about. And so for the Turks, who currently control the area, they certainly have to wonder if they backed the wrong horse when they decided to go all in with the backing of Ukraine, the backing of Zelensky. There are also talks about the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Of course, Zaporizhia itself being one of the oblasts that has been annexed and has been joined, or has voted to join the Russian Federation. The U.S., of course, is negotiating directly with Russia now. You see this, by the way. Where are the Ukrainians? Where's Zelensky? Well, he was thrown out of the White House, and he hasn't been back. I went to visit him in the Ukrainian presidential complex, as well as a delegation directly from President Trump and the White House. He was presented a term sheet. He rejected it. He then rejected it at the Munich summit with J.D. Vance, and he rejected it in the White House with President Trump. So that's the three denials of Zelensky there, of this mineral deal and of this term sheet. You're also hearing information regarding assurances that they do not want NATO to enter into the security situation further. You're hearing, because there's constantly noise from the British, from the French, that they're going to send troops in, a peacekeeping force, and this has been completely and just categorically rejected by the Russians out of hand. They don't want to see this, and in fact have gone so far as to describe them as saying that if you enter Ukraine, we will consider you enemy combatants. And finally, there's been some talk as well from the intelligence chief of Ukraine, Budanov, signaling perhaps a collapse of, and it's tough to say because this is all through leaked reports, but perhaps of the front, perhaps of the entire Ukrainian armed forces by midsummer. So midsummer 2025, do they have gas in the tank to be able to go further than that, even after the current collapse of Kursk? Now, we're told that President Trump received assurances from Putin on the phone call just now regarding a 30-day renunciation of strikes on energy infrastructure by the Russian Federation into Ukraine. Of course, things are heating up, so going into spring, going into summer. They talked about an initiative regarding the Black Sea. Putin called for the complete cessation of military aid to Kiev. This is the key condition for resolving the conflict of Ukraine, by the way. And finally, Putin confirmed to Trump that the Russian Federation will guarantee the lives and decent treatment of Ukrainian soldiers if they surrender in the Kursk region. Remember, we talked about Kursk being part of Russia. There's also talk about a prisoner exchange that could take place as early as tomorrow. Hundreds of prisoners on either side.